We just got done talking about fueling, how to do it properly, and why it's important. So now we're going to talk about what happens when we don't do that properly. These are the consequences of poor stress balance and underfueling. And we're going to dive into recognizing the signs of REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport. So this is the stress pie concept, and basically our entire life, we can add up all the stress and total it into this pie. So the body doesn't separate our training stress from our work stress, from our family stress. It interprets and responds to all of those stressors in the same way. We can only take on so much of a stress load at any given time before our pie is maxed out. If one area becomes all of a sudden an increased stressor, something else has to give. We can't have more than 100% of the pie. So if, for example, we are maxed out between our job, family stress, maybe somebody's got health issues, or there's a death in the family, or you just moved. These are all major stressors. You can't assume that you can maintain the exact same training load and that it's okay. Your body at some point in time is going to take that stress and try to find ways to compensate. So what is RED-S? This occurs when energy intake is insufficient to support training and normal physiology. This can be because of overtraining specifically, too much training stress put on the body, or it can be because it's too much of a demand in conjunction with all of those other stressors in our life, and paired with not taking in enough nutrition on a daily basis. So this isn't just about a body weight issue. This isn't somebody that necessarily is purposefully trying to create a deficit and go negative calories. This often happens accidentally and just over time and chronic deficiency because of somebody maybe not necessarily tracking their calorie ins and outs and not truly realizing how much they need to eat to account for everything they're burning in the day. Athletes often can appear healthy, and your weight actually can maintain a pretty consistent number even while being underfueled. The body is pretty amazing, and if you've ever actually tried to actively lose weight, you realize how hard it is because the body has this set baseline, no matter if you're overweight or underweight, and it creates a homeostasis and balance at that number, and it tries to do everything it can to keep you there. So even when we are underfueled, you might see an initial dip in weight, but it will bounce back and kind of level out. And that makes people have this false sense of security that they're fueling properly. However, underlying all of that, the body decreases the resting metabolic rate to make up for that insufficient calorie intake. It slows down things. It's trying to conserve energy. It does everything it can for you to not lose weight. But overall, this can impact every system in the body, including hormones and metabolism, bone health, recovery and adaptation, mood and cognition, immune function, and then performance, both in training and in racing. There are so many signs and symptoms. They're often dismissed. They are often attributed to other things, and they kind of creep up on you. And they don't necessarily all happen at once. They don't necessarily all happen to every single person. So it's hard to kind of look outward in and see how all of these symptoms actually fit together into one puzzle. So here's just a long list of some of the things: persistent low energy and a heavy leg feeling, specifically in working out. The same feeling you get when you're going out for a run and it's like the first really, really hot day of the year. Just the body's heavy, the body's tired, the body's very low energy. You get this feeling more consistently though. Difficulty completing normal workouts. So your perceived exertion and or your heart rate are going to run a little bit higher than normal at a given pace and power. So maybe one day, so previously your comfortable aerobic pace on the run is a 10-minute mile. And then over time, you feel like running that same pace is extra effort and your heart rate runs higher than it should at that same pace. You're unable to put out the same amount of power, so the same kind of thing goes on the bike. You feel like it's a lot harder to get the power output for a given zone. You have increased hunger or a loss of appetite. You have cravings for sugar and highly processed foods, especially at the end of the day. Feeling cold frequently, mood changes, irritability, anxiety, reduced motivation and enthusiasm for training. It's just harder to get going. Poor sleep quality despite feeling super fatigued. Fatigue, that's a big one. Just in general, it's kind of like you can pull yourself together to perform that one workout, but then you're just wiped out for the rest of the day. Slower recovery between sessions, persistent soreness, more frequent illness or injury. This is all the body not kind of shutting things down and sending what energy it does have to its vital functions. And so as the metabolism drops, all of these things kind of decrease with it. Then things continue to progress into more severe symptoms. That chronic fatigue gets worse. Non-functional overreaching, so training at this point is just really not achieving any real purpose. It's just adding stress into your body. You've already kind of dug yourself into this big hole, and you're just digging deeper by continuing to train. Hormonal disruption and adrenal suppression. We'll see low testosterone in men. Sometimes not menstrual dysfunction in women. This can be a late sign. Sleep disturbances, nervous system dysregulation, heart rate. So now for a given training effort, you'll notice that the heart rate actually runs low. This is the nervous system saying, we cannot meet the demands that you're trying to place on us, and the heart rate and the blood pressure just can't come up to the efforts that you're trying to put out. You'll notice low blood pressure. You might have some dizziness going from lying or sitting to standing. This is orthostatic hypotension. It's the body's inability to compensate for those position changes quickly like they normally would be able to. GI distress. This is a big one, and it can actually be an earlier sign too. It can mimic IBS. You're going to have some bloating, pain, decreased appetite, diarrhea. You're going to feel like you just can't take in that training nutrition anymore because everything is just making your belly upset. Frequent infections due to suppressed immunity. This might be, every week you kind of feel like you're getting that scratchy throat. You may never get full-blown illnesses because you are a healthy individual, but it almost feels like you're all the time just kind of fighting something off. Eventually, stress fractures or recurrent injuries, depression, burnout, severe performance decline. We get to the point where now we're in such a big hole. This is something that's very difficult to come back from unless addressed as soon as possible. So how little of a deficit can actually cause a problem? So chronically, small deficits do accumulate over time. This is going to take a lot longer. This can take months, even years sometimes, but even just a small deficit a day, 100, 200, 300 calories over time, that's really going to add up. It's going to start impairing your recovery, especially if you start ramping up your training load for a given race. It can also occur in a shorter period of time, as little as a day or 1 week, depending on how fine of a line you've been walking with your calorie intake and output and your stressors. If you've kind of been teetering on that edge and playing that game with training hard and not fueling properly, all it can take is one major thing to happen to send you in that hole. This could be an illness, an extra stressor such as a death, an illness, a move, anything like that. And then all of a sudden, one day or within 1 week, you're just not eating as much because you're busy, you're not feeling well, and now you've created such a big deficit that it can just spark the syndrome very quickly. Athletes often underestimate the training energy expenditure. So we often have an idea of our daily calorie burn and kind of how much to eat based on that. But I don't think a lot of athletes actually realize how much they're burning both in training and then how much extra you burn after training because of the revving up of the system. Repeated underfueling after sessions compounds the stress. So when you're not taking in the carbs and the protein afterward and allowing the body to start recovering and rebuilding those muscles, it's just adding to the stress of the body. The combination of high training and inadequate carbohydrate availability is especially risky. Insufficient sleep and life stress dramatically accelerate the progression, as I mentioned. You may have already been walking a fine line. It just takes that one major stressor to send your body over the edge. So why does carb availability matter? Low glycogen availability increases the stress hormone response. It may elevate cortisol, and while cortisol in a healthy individual, a little bit of cortisol is not a bad thing. It's kind of a stress response that helps our body deal with it, but chronically in large doses, this is not a good thing. Reduced glycogen impairs training quality and immune function. Athletes often mistake poor fueling for a lack of fitness. So as we see those changes in our workouts where we're not hitting numbers, it feels harder to get to specific zones, it's very easy to say, I've lost fitness, I need to work harder. Some of us may have even had coaches at one point in time say, okay, we're gonna start hitting a higher zone because something's not working here, and then it's actually not picking up on the right signs. Strategic carbohydrate intake supports adaptation and nervous system recovery. Common mistakes that increase risk for REDS. Increasing the training volume too quickly, trying to lose weight during heavy training blocks, ignoring rest days or recovery weeks. How many of us are guilty of getting a rest day on the calendar, even a recovery week after a race or at the end of the year, and we don't follow the rules? We go out, we run, we bike anyway, or we do what we want. It's very important to give our body that downtime, both within the week to week of training and also within the year overall. Performing too many hard sessions, underestimating sweat and carbohydrate losses, and believing fatigue is a sign to push harder. So recovery and prevention strategies. Matching the energy intake to training demands, but also matching how much you're training based on your overall stress in life. So have an idea of what are the stressors that are making up your pie, and are you overloading that pie? Prioritize carbohydrate availability around key sessions. Aim for consistent sleep and stress management. Make sleep an absolute priority. Even if that means skipping sessions because your day ran too late, skip the session. Prioritize your sleep, bounce back, do better the next day, move on. Don't feel guilty for missing things. Use deloading and recovery weeks intentionally. Track nutrition. I recommend using an app that you can pair with your training so it can take into mind your actual calorie expenditure in workouts and add that to your daily needs. I use just the free MyFitnessPal. It works totally fine. Once you start plugging in some foods, it's a lot easier to plug them in the future. But it just helps me keep on track, and you can also plug in your macro demands. So back into the fueling talk from previous, the daily percentages that you want for carbs, fats, and proteins, you can adjust that in MyFitnessPal, so it'll give you what you need day to day. You want to monitor trends. Look for changes in your mood, your motivation, your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability, your appetite, your sleep quality. If you wear a watch, or if you wear a Garmin watch or one of those type watches, but you're not wearing it while you sleep, consider wearing it while you sleep. A lot of that data is pretty accurate and just a good thing to look at over time. Learn to be in tune with your mind and body and actually listen to it. If you're completely exhausted one day or just getting home from work, you've had a bigger day than normal, and your body's just telling you to sit down and relax, don't push too hard. Take that rest day. Move things around if possible. And sometimes doing a little bit of light activity, or maybe if it's a scheduled intense section, maybe just take the intensity down. Sometimes when you do get moving, it does help, blood flow starts going, and it does help you wake up a little bit more and get going. So it is worth trying working out sometimes, but if you're noticing it as a trend, really try to be in tune to that. So address the early signs before the severe symptoms develop. Key takeaways: overtraining in REDS develops gradually but can become severe. Subtle signs often appear long before major performance declines. Total life stress matters, not just your training load. Small chronic calorie deficits can significantly impair recovery. Fueling and recovery are performance tools, not optional extras. The early warning signs The earlier the warning signs are addressed, the faster the recovery tends to be. And one thing I just want to add to this, if you are a long game endurance coach athlete, or you are an athlete that has a coach, tell your coach about those other stressors in your life. When things come up, let them know. This helps them work with you. The more they know, the better. Take care and be well.